take the story of renewables. It's the case already today that all over the world, renewable energy is a cheaper source of energy than fossil fuel energy. There was a powerful piece of work that was published in 2023 by Mark Jacobson and colleagues at Stanford University that showed that the payback time in purely financial terms on renewables investments was only 5.5 years, which at the time was about how long we got to 1.5 degrees. Only 5 in purely financial terms. And if you layered in all the externalities of the impacts of, for example, of air quality and the health impacts and so on, that burning fossil fuels imposes, the payback period was less than a year. It is a complete financial and socio-economic no-brainer to move everything to a renewable basis as quickly as possible. And then, of course, that opens up other industries as well. We're already seeing this in terms of the transport industry. The electrification of vehicles is already a done deal. It's already the case that by 2030, more than half the world's new vehicles sold will be fully electric. By the way, 65% of that today is in Asia, particularly China. That's where huge amount of the driving of demand and production of EVs is happening. And in the same way as what happened in China drove down the cost of solar and drove down the cost of wind, it's now driving down the cost of EVs. And ultimately, that's a really good thing because that's what creates that financial incentive, if you like, on the markets to invest. The next frontiers are water. There's a colossal amount of investment going into and a colossal drop that's happening in the cost of desalination. There's a huge amount of investment going into trying to effectively get water out of air. There's a huge amount of investment going into trying to take the carbon directly out of the air. Let's hope some of these things pay off, because if they don't pay off, we're just not going to do what we need to do fast enough. And that's leaving aside, of course, the whole digitization AI revolution, which means, for example, you can create the digital twin of an entire city within 3 days today. And the power of that, we're only just starting to scrape the surface of this. We know the London transport model took like 6 months to run 20 years ago, didn't it? But now we can do these things overnight. But we still haven't quite got to the point of working out how we then move those insights to action as quickly as possible. So we're heading into a steady state world. We can start to picture what we need to do. We have a lot of technology that can help us to get there. We don't even have a problem with money, actually. I mean, governments do, but there's plenty of money in the private sector if we can just put it into this industry. But it's not enough. It's not enough. We also need to change mindsets. And we need to change mindsets through having, in my view, vision and storytelling. And Sue will recognize this. So this sort of view, if you like, this vision for what infrastructure is about, we connect the world, we build prosperity, we reduce poverty, we create sustainable quality of life, we enable a better future for everyone. I put this up because I wrote this on my kitchen table in January 2018, actually between Christmas and New Year 2018. And I wrote it because I had the privilege of just coming into leading our global infrastructure network, and I felt we needed something to explain to everybody why it mattered, why what we did mattered. And I wrote this down, and to my astonishment, a colleague in Kenya put this up on the screen 3 weeks ago when I was in Kenya. So sometimes, even though you make these things up over New Year on your own kitchen table, they can stick. And infrastructure today is all the things that I said on that last slide. But we are, whether we like it or not, on the front line of what needs to happen in the world to tackle the climate challenge. We know it's responsible, infrastructure is responsible for something like 80% of greenhouse emissions. Nearly all of the adaptation costs that are required, so that protection of the essential assets on which we depend in society, power stations, water treatment plants and so on, protecting them from contamination in flooding events and so on. Nearly all of the world's adaptation costs sit within the infrastructure space. And when we come to the UN SDGs, for those of you that don't recognise the pin that I'm wearing, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, 92% of the underlying targets come back to things to do with infrastructure. So this is our privilege in this room, if we're in this infrastructure sector. It's perhaps our burden, but it is absolutely our responsibility. We have the ability as individuals and through our networks and through our businesses, we have the incredible privilege to be able to make a massive difference in the trajectory of the world over the next years. Practically, what do we need to do? I've boiled it down to these three things over the last few years. At the top is essentially what we need from government. We need consistency, we need clarity, we need the enabling framework that allows private sector technology, private sector investment to come in. We have to have that clarity. When you get that clarity, all EVs by 2035 will be zero emission. It's amazing how easy it is for the market to actually move into that space.